the
How do I change my
microphone that's
name?
ridiculous? Or is it just you?
Definitely
He
not
who
me.
waggeth the tail, waggeth the dog. I don't know. Okay, wait. So it says it's broadcasting. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, there we are. Cool. Vishak's here. So to the people who
Vishak, we can hear you typing.
Wow, but you can't hear me talk.
I can also hear you talk when you talk.
Okay, great.
And now I think, is Navi coming or?
I don't think she'll be able to make it.
I'm assuming we might see her at some point. Would be nice, but we'll see.
Hold on, just tweeting out the link that Auto posted. Okay, so yeah, so YouTube we can't do for another 24, 48 hours because of how they have to approve the accounts. But whatever, next time we'll do it.
That's a bummer.
It's the same thing.
Can you download this video later?
Yes.
Hey, perfect.
And it'll be available to replay on Twitter. Wait, why is it like Brady Bunch?
Man, your lighting is so good.
I'm impressed with the microphone. I said I'm impressed with your microphone when you speak into it. The voice is so warm and enveloping. It's amazing.
Thanks. I don't know. Man. What should we do? I could actually move this. I could have done an intro video too. All these little cool tools in StreamYard. Anyway, what am I looking for? There we go. Cool. All right. So, TezFin. We've come a long way, and we're close. If you have any questions that come up, you can just ask them in the Twitter thread. That's the link for this video. So you're watching it right now. Right in that thread, just send a reply. So it's been a long time. A lot of people have been patiently waiting. For a lot of reasons, we couldn't get to where we are now, which is very close to launch, without certain technologies coming live on the blockchain itself. So these were just technology matters that needed to, one thing after another had to be done, horse before carriage. And then for another, no one's ever done this before. So there was, it's one thing to be like, oh, let's just do what they do on Compound or Aave on Tezos. Okay, now the follow through. This is all new stuff. So, then we wanted to get it right because of what it means for the ecosystem. What a lending system means for Tezos, it's not just another app. It's not just another mode of DeFi. It's something that makes everything else we've done in DeFi through now able to scale. And it honestly, truly just was not able to scale before a lending system, and it is not. Neither was Ethereum DeFi before they had Compound and Aave. Before they had those, I mean, it was about the same size as Tezos DeFi is right now. You can't really hold a TVL. You can't total value locked. You can't really bring liquidity into the system and make it stay unless there's some kind of a reward subsidy in some form or another. That's going to have to, it's going to eventually just, people will take their winnings and their earnings and then just leave. Eventually they go away. They treat it like a casino. They get out, they go home. But that's not what this is. It's not sustainable that way. Not to mention all the other aspects. Whole half side of DeFi and what finance is borrowing stuff. And no one's been able to borrow anything, let alone all the things they would do with all that stuff that they borrowed, let alone what that would do to expand lending itself and everything else in DeFi. And this is not just DeFi, it's NFTs. So most transaction calls per day on Tezos network by far are for NFTs, for marketplaces. And I talk to NFT artists literally every day. You see me lurking around all the Tezos spaces, Clubhouse, here and there, Discord, everything. And so really, when you talk to these artists and the ones that maybe they come to Tezos or they start on Tezos, that's a big thing now, and then going and graduating to Ethereum, it has nothing to do with the community. It has nothing to do with the tools that they want to access. No, it always comes down to the ticket size, the money, and how much one is able to earn. So that's not really, that's more the consequence of all the things we do in DeFi. By the time NFTs started into the big boom that they were on Ethereum, they already had a full-fledged DeFi ecosystem, and it scaled to the tens of billions of dollars. It was there. I think even almost to 100 billion by the time DeFi started to scale, or NFT started to scale on Ethereum. So yeah. So I mean, that's really the only element missing. But regardless of not having a scaled DeFi system and having NFT marketplaces where they are now, which is top 5 in some instances, top 10 in others, for users, for transactions, and even for volume, it's not OpenSea, but Object is pretty up there in volume already. Imagine what will happen once we have a lending system. Imagine what will happen once we have the liquidity that a scaled DeFi ecosystem on Tezos can bring. And then otherwise, if you don't care about any of this stuff, this is financial literacy for the new world. This is what going to your bank eventually, what it will become, what we hope it can become in the plant, and provide something better, safer, smarter, better privacy, more equality, and more opportunity to do what you want to do. That's why this matters. But yeah, so we know there are a lot of questions, and we'll definitely take questions. But yeah, who wants to go first? Mike Vashak, talking about what brought us here, where we are.
Well, what brought us here was you, Kevin. I mean, a lot of this came about because of our happenstance meeting in Los Angeles when you were having one of your Los Angeles Tezos meetups, which was, as I recall it, a most opportune and excellent event. And we just kind of got thinking, we were talking a lot about the Tezos ecosystem, opportunities in Tezos. And one of the things that we discussed were what were the missing ingredients, like what could take Tezos to the next level. And one of the opportunities we identified collectively in that meetup was some really crucial tools for really turbocharging decentralized finance on Tezos. And then one thing led to the other, and long story short, here we are. It's been quite a few months. We started building the smart contract, and then at some point a UI was being put together. Initially, the task was really hard because Tezos was a relatively new platform. There were some technical limitations that required a lot of sort of contortions to get something as complicated as a lending platform built. But, and we can get into this later, but thankfully, due to some of the recent protocol upgrades, some of the limitations that we were going up against relating to gas fees or the ability for one contract to call another, they were relaxed and improved quite a bit. So we have been able to simplify our work. We've been able to kind of make it more sophisticated, and ironically make it more sophisticated by simplifying the code due to these new protocol features. And at the moment, we have a really basic beta running privately, and we're putting the finishing touches to our liquidation logic. So that's generally where we are, Kevin. You're on mute.
There.
You're again on mute.
There. Now it should work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Microphone's too fancy.
No, it's just it went asleep, and then I had to click two things to make it wake up. So the one thing that comes up where the nature of how Tezos was built initially to avoid reentrancy attacks, and how that complicated aspects for things we wanted to do in DeFi and some of the instruments that we needed built into the protocol. And then that's what took time, whereas Ethereum was and other protocols are more or less ready for the types of instruments that we needed to build because of the nature of the way that they were made, and why some of the updates that came relatively recently enabled those things. Could you got a nice spiel on that?
Yeah, truth be told, this was a bit controversial, because anytime you're building a sophisticated decentralized platform, a lot of trade-offs have to be made. So on Tezos, there's something called continuation passing style. So for those who are technically inclined, one contract couldn't directly invoke another, which you can of course do on Ethereum and other platforms. So that made coding on Tezos awkward when one contract was calling another. And this is a problem particularly in DeFi, because DeFi relies a lot on composability, not only between different protocols, but within even specific protocols. So this TezFin platform that's being built, it's highly modular. There's a controller, there's the equivalent of C tokens, and so on. So there are all these modules of TezFin that need to continuously talk to each other back and forth. So this callback system, as opposed to sort of direct function calls, it made things a little bit awkward. Now, the upshot of having this continuation passing style was it prevents something called, or it minimizes something called reentrancy attacks. And for those who have been in crypto for more than a couple of cycles, they might remember the DAO on Ethereum. So that's an example of a reentrancy attack leading to potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. And likewise, there have been other DeFi hacks that, where the underlying cause has been a reentrancy attack. Reentrancy attacks are really easy to do. Tezos, from the beginning, it's really underscored stability and security and formal methods, right? So Tezos took the other side of the trade-off, different from Ethereum. But of course, dealing with sort of this kind of technology in some ways is harder, right? So one example is Tezos lends itself better to formal verification. But to work with formal verification, you have to be really trained in formal methods and know how to apply them successfully. So because of that reason, coding a rich system of smart contracts, particularly for a complex application like TezFin, was a bit challenging. And again, if anyone is curious now or on a future occasion, if there's developers who are curious, we can go into great painful detail about what this entails. But at some point, the Tezos community realized that we can keep the security while making our lives as developers a little bit easier. So the concept of views was introduced as part of the Edo protocol, I believe. So now one contract can call another contract without having to go through a complex communication arrangement. one contract can directly read the state of another contract. So that greatly simplifies intricate smart contract systems like those of TezFin. And another thing is, previously, because there had to be all these callbacks back and forth between these different contracts, the amount of gas consumed for even basic operations was pretty high. So there is a gas limit on Tezos as on other chains. So because we didn't have views and we had to do all this complicated stuff, there was an additional constraint that we kept running into this gas limit. However, not only was this gas limit relaxed a little bit, but we have this really powerful feature called views now. So cumulatively, what this means is we had to do a bunch of really awkward stuff. Again, anytime anyone is actually interested, we can go into painful detail. We love talking painful detail, but I don't want to open with it. But we have been able to take out a lot of awkwardness. And that's good because that makes the code easier to reason about. At some point, the code will be open source. Any Tezos developer can have a look for their own comfort and to feel that the platform is secure and well written. So it makes the whole platform really a lot easier to reason about. So that's why it was worth it to take a few additional months to rewrite some really core bits of the TezFin smart contracts. So even though there's a delay in rolling out the product compared to before, the roadmap has been extended, but it's really worthwhile because these smart contracts are simplified, much easier to reason about. And if you're a Tezos developer out there, you're going to have a much easier time reading the code. Before, even our team, which does a lot of Tezos work, had to kind of sit back and just kind of like, reason about the code, think, okay, which function is calling what function, at what point does the other smart contract get done with its processing and call the original contract back. Anyway, bottom line is the whole system is looking a lot leaner because of this thing that Kevin mentioned.
Yeah, thank you for that. And initially we were just going to keep it without views at all for this version, but then we decided that ultimately it was the best move to at least rewrite some parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year there were so many DeFi hacks, and a lot of these were because it wasn't because someone wrote the platform irresponsibly or didn't spend a lot of money hiring the right audit companies. And believe me, these audits cost a lot of money, right? And there's some really well qualified people that are looking at it. But no matter what DeFi hack you look at, always there's some flaw that's come about because it's hard to reason about this stuff. There's so many different vectors, right? And as human beings, we're just kind of incapable of keeping track of all of them. That's why it's really, really important that if we're launching a platform on Tezos, potentially the first lending platform, who knows, but one of the perhaps one of the most complex products on Tezos, then we have to make it easy for everybody to reason about. Otherwise, to lock up hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions one day, into a platform where, even a very experienced, highly qualified person has to stare at the code 7 times just to make a sense of the sequence in which the contracts are calling each other. That would be that wouldn't be ideal. So that's why we're taking this time.
Yeah, but we're almost there. Yeah, so should we demo it at this point?
We should always demo it. You should demo it.
Should I demo it?
You should demo it, Mike.
I should demo it. Give me a minute to get the latest code running, though, okay?
All right. And then other things. Likely this week we'll be announcing, because it's related, a new arrangement custody-wise an issuance for USD Tez. So a major change in our user agreement US policy will be this week. We'll announce that this week. There's that. We'll also be on the TezX front for this year and what's up next. We did lay out something on the TezX Twitter about what the plans are for 2022. What we're going to get to first, though, will be, well, it's really two parts, but one part would be a DEX aggregator, and then the other part, there we go. Okay. So one part will be a DEX aggregator, and then that would be between XTZ and any other token, because now we have the scale in which this kind of thing can be built, and then we're going to connect that with a fiat, or we'll make it connectable with various credit card fiat processing to XTZ, and in that way, for the user, it's a seamless experience to go from credit card or fiat to the end token of your choice. But at the same time, it does all of this routing stuff under the hood, and it empowers the decentralized Tezos DeFi ecosystem. So it uses all of these resources that we have been building, and to a much better effect than I think even a single, historically, as we've seen, that individual centralized exchanges, they're just not the right place. They haven't been the right place for Tezos FA tokens. We're going to keep trying, right? But through now, I think what we've seen as where the action has been, have been towards the decentralized exchanges, and I think it's bringing it together now that is obviously the next step. And I'm hearing more and more talk about that recently, like a lot of DMs and everything. People are asking about, is there an aggregator anywhere, that kind of thing. So the ability to put that together and to get people to go from cash to whatever Tezos token they want, that's really it's important for commerce as well as DeFi. So yeah, Mike, we ready? Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, this is quite unexpected. So give me a couple of minutes.
Oh, and you see on the ticker at the bottom, we put out what the first coins will be. A lot of people ask what will the initial tokens be? Are you going to add this token? Are you going to add that thing? When it comes to things that are DAO tokens, oh, hold on. There we go. So when it comes to things that are DAO tokens, so like your HDAO or your Plenty or Crunchy, I mean, those are things that don't necessarily get the same kind of spending volume or borrowing volume that you would get from stable coins or a Tezos wrap. Some of them, there are exceptions because they do operate more as utilities. But really the way you build up any kind of a DeFi economy is you start with Tez and Tez wraps. So the things that people need just to make the ecosystem hum, the blockchain, the native blockchain instrument itself, the stable coins, because that's the counterweight to everything going on in the growth crypto economy. And those get the highest volume by far of anything with the native token. You can just look at the markets on centralized exchanges for that. Go to CoinMarketCap. You can click on the markets tab, see the volume and of what coin to what coin. They actually break it down by percentages. The vast majority is USD coin, and then to a lesser extent other things that we consider stable coins or stable-like assets. And in particular, those need to be hard backed because those are the confidence building instruments. Those are the things to which the other non-hard backed stable coins get their peg, get their strength. They draw their strength from things that are hard collateral backed. So that's why we have, say, USD Tez first, and TZBTC along with BTC Tez, and LUG, Eurotez, URL, EURL symbol. They came out on Tezos more recently. That's a hard backed instrument as well. So that'll be part of the first wave. Those are the things that build the confidence. And then for the second wave, we'll have the algo coins. So those are the algorithmic backed, soft backed, however you want to call them, robo coins, some people call them. stable-like instruments, some people call them. Those are the things that will come in the second wave, because really, even just the scale that would allow those coins to build up to the point that it would make sense to even add them to a lending system, that we need a scaled markets with that first wave first. And then after that, we can start to look at things that are more utilities, but on the governance side kind of thing. But they need a lot of volume. Mike's ready.
Can you see my screen share?
Let's see here. Adding it to the stream.
I can see it now.
There we go.
Very cool. Okay, so this is a random test account that I'm using with a bunch of random test tokens. And as Kevin mentioned, these are wrapped assets that have high liquidity in the general DeFi market. So we have BTC-TZ, ETH-TZ, XTZ, and USDTZ. So you can collateralize any of them, borrow any of them that are available. So let's just run through a quick workflow. Keep in mind, this is quite pre-release, and you'll definitely see inconsistencies in the UI, and you'll see numbers that don't necessarily make sense. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is that we have a more or less functioning collection of smart contracts. So what I'm going to do first to participate in the lending platform is I'm going to supply, in this case, BTC-TZ, and then I'm going to use it as collateral so I can borrow something else. So now it's communicating via beacon to my Galleon wallet, where I'm going to confirm this transaction. Cool, so that's in flight now. This is going to take maybe a minute to settle, and then we'll see this refresh in the UI. Cool, got a very happy check from that. So here I'm supplying some BTC. Very nice. So what I can do now is I can collateralize it. Why would I do that? I would like to borrow against it, and that requires an additional action. So when I'm supplying, what I'm doing is I'm letting other people borrow my tokens. When I'm supplying and I'm marking that token as collateral, which is not necessary. For that matter, I can supply multiple tokens and mark only some of them as collateral. When I'm marking something as collateral, what I'm saying is I'm going to borrow against it. And if my loan goes underwater, the tokens that I have collateralized may get liquidated. So we're going to say yes to that. That's going to be another beacon operation. Back to Galleon, one moment. Cool, that's in flight now. So let's wait for that to confirm, and then we're going to show the borrow workflow. All right, let's see if we jinx this thing at some point, because we did this earlier today and it worked. Cool, so now we see what's available in the market. And the only other thing that I can borrow right now is XTZ, which is fine. So let's borrow 100 XTZ. That's certainly within my borrow limit. Account Galleon. And, you know, obviously I'm using Galleon because I work on Galleon and I happen to like it, but this will work with any beacon-enabled wallet. Very cool, so that's in flight now. So I think, by the way, the block time in Ithaca, which is going to be deployed in a couple of weeks, is reduced, I believe, from 30 seconds to 20 seconds. So all this stuff is going to be even a little quicker. So let's see what's happening. I am supplying now about 1 Bitcoin. And against it, I'm borrowing 100 XTZ. And these are the dollar values, 39,000, give or take, for Bitcoin and $300 for XTZ. A couple of things to note. Obviously, my borrow limit is incorrect and the borrow limit bar is wrong, but we get other things that are correct. So I'm supplying, I'm collateralized, I'm borrowing. What I can do is I can repay this loan. So on this side, you see my wallet balance, which is almost 4,000 XTZ. So I can repay this loan, and I'm going to repay, let's say, more, because I would like to repay the full loan. Well, we did jinx it. So I'm going to have to see why. But yes, the supply, the borrow, the repay workflows do work. There are definitely some rough edges, as you can see. There are some other things, like, for example, when you repay and you say use max, it doesn't take into account my currently accrued but not recorded interest and things like that. But other than that, with few exceptions, the system does function. So we're going to be deploying this, I think, to IthacaNet in a couple of days to continue testing there, but I see no reason why it wouldn't work. And that's what we got.
And I just want to add that we're developing this fairly aggressively. So every day there's new code changes going in. So due to this continuous integration, there's always a chance that one thing or the other doesn't work. But overall, yeah, we have a lot.
I was totally able to repay earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And then who knows, with the next version that's pushed out, that'll work again.
Yeah, and there are a lot of versions to come, in particular as we go into the commercial use case. Well, to other, I'm talking about NFT collateralization, which is it's still very early on that, but it's definitely something that comes up a lot. Fractionalized NFT, like you're basically making a coin out of the NFT by chopping it. That's not the method that we're going to be employing. Instead, it'll be, you can see it in the on Tezos.finance, the article you'll find on Medium. It gets into it there, but it would basically enable a way to have a type of guarantor system using lending as much as we have in our traditional world type of policies, financial and all that. Also, with one of the wraps that I wanted to mention, because we talked about this with OTEZ or OXTZ. That's if you're not familiar with that, it's newer. You might be familiar with CTEZ and WTZ. Those are used in DeFi. WTZ, DeFi, it's used on Crunchy and Spicy Swap and Matter DeFi. CTEZ we're seeing in many other types of exchanges, different AMMs. But what OTEZ is, and it's like, why do we need another one? It's a bit different based on the way in which Object is implementing their version of a wrapped token and what they're going to be doing with their whole structure. They have a different type of calculus involved. And I think that's interesting to me because we start to see a new type of use case of wrap native tokens, that this can become, you can add many different layers of meaning and value, even though the fundamental price value that we know of for the underlying asset is pegged towards plain old Tez. But what OTEZ is used for, so you can go on object.com now, and you can see it after you sync your wallet. You can wrap or unwrap your XTZ and OXTZ. And OXTZ can be used on the platform, on Object, for purchasing, just the same as you would. So it's closer to WTZ than it is with CTEZ. So this is an actual not necessarily DeFi use case, but nonetheless such a huge pillar of the Tezos DeFi economy, just as being a sector of the overall economy, of the Tezos economy. But yeah, so that's why I think it'll make, and I'm talking a lot about this because I think it'll be, I don't think we ever thought of that in such a way before, but when XTZ just kind of appeared, it's like, okay, people can actually just lend their Tez, borrow, maybe when they want to stay on the price of Tez, not necessarily get a stable coin like USD Tez, but or not even necessarily BTC Tez or something like that. But what they'd want to get would be another version of Tez that's keeping the price of Tez as they know it, but particular to this marketplace, which they happen to spend a lot of their time on. And you do have thousands of people, right? That's a lot in crypto. That's like a gajillion in the real world. So that's a good seed of a market, and they're buying and selling on Object, and that's all they do. They don't do anything else. Maybe if they need to get money over to Object or get it out of Object, that's what they'll do. But like that's their primary destination. And even the other NFT marketplaces, that they channel those through Object. So OXTZ is something that they interact with a lot and they interface with a lot. So lending their Tez and borrowing OXTZ, that's a huge use case that we can imagine a lot of volume coming in. And it also frees up, if you're an NFT artist and you want to see a lot more money coming in, you want to see bigger ticket items and bigger ticket sales, this is very much a key to that, because you will have people who will feel less risk inclined because they're borrowing an asset as opposed to spending their Tez on this. And that's particularly good if they think, you put out some one of one, or you put out some original edition, some singular that's a multi edition. They might just get one of them. They might get a couple, one so they could get their money back, maybe another to flip, or one to keep, or maybe they want to flip them all or whatever. But if they're thinking in that sense at all, like that there would be some kind of appreciation, that they would be able to recoup their assets as a function of time, then, and I'm watching my words here because I don't want to degrade the integrity of the artwork as though it's this commodity. I mean, but in terms of the economics, in terms of the finance structure, that's what I'm referring to. If they believe that the price will appreciate and they could segment part of what they acquired and sell that so they could recoup their assets, maybe even make some profit, while at the same time appreciating this art for what it is, well, then they would be much more inclined to do that if they could feel such a less consequence. And that's the case when you're borrowing an asset, not necessarily spending it. Because otherwise, I mean, they just have their Tez and they're holding on to it. And they're able to stake it. And they can grow funds on that, and that's another element of like why people wrap things in the first place, why we have any of this Tezos wrapping at all, because it basically handles all of that process and lets you have an instrument that could just be treated as a static instrument, and not something that in itself is accumulating more interest or reward, or however you want to call the added funds that come in. Anyway. But yeah, so that's my point. That's the one that I think will be very interesting to watch what it does with the NFT economy. So I think that'll definitely garner the most interest outside of just the strictly DeFi scaling sense of what TezFin can bring. And I think that'll just be an example of what we could imagine the future of lending being and becoming in this very DApp programmable world where your instruments and financial instruments and utilities and your picture of an animal and all that stuff, they're all kind of coming together, but also they've never been more distinct. I don't know. Anyway, let's see if we have any questions. Vincent, you have any thoughts? You've been quiet. You've been too quiet.
Yeah, because the specialists are Mike and Ishak, and you are the best storyteller of all. It's a great project, right? And I'm excited to work on it, and I'm excited to see it progressing. I know it has been a long time, but that's the way it is, right? It's pretty. It requires a lot of skills, and as Vishak was saying, we waited for some upgrade that came, so that's great. Now we can progress smoothly, and we are happy that the community is patient and it's going to come soon.
And we did get thank you, Vincent. We did get a question I guess it was for Mike. What is meant by repay? What do you mean by repay?
Well, you repay the loan that the balance that you borrowed. You have to repay your loans.
Fair enough. I think
just
if there
I
more
want to add
explain
one more thing. A loan can be repaid either by the borrower or someone else. So in the case of a liquidation, if Kevin doesn't have enough collateral for his loan, then I can repay some part of Kevin's loan, and in return, I get to seize some of his collateral. So repay is also a key part of the of the liquidation process.
Yeah. And really all of this stuff is connected because you can't really alter one part of it or fix one part or change one part without everything else being affected, because the the liquidation and repayment part, I mean, it's connected to the borrowing side, which is within that there is this lending side of things. These interest rates, they are connected to each other and they inform one another, or they're informed by the same elements, the same data elements of supply and demand. The lending rate is implicit in the borrowing rate, and from there to even think what one can borrow, that's connected to the collateralization function, and which determines what a person's obligations are to repay, or otherwise what their obligation, what the repercussions are for not paying in terms of liquidation. And that's something that people do need to remember as this happens. And we'll do a lot more of these, a lot more spaces. We need to do a lot more on financial literacy for this era, because I think people do often, like, it does enable a lot of stuff you can do that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, or that you wouldn't have been able to do in the traditional banking system. But in other ways, also the safeguards that you have, where like you should not expect the same thing. This is DeFi. This is crypto. If it's, I see a lot of money coming in, it's like, well, that's probably tied to an equal amount of risk. So it's important to know what you're doing before jumping into this. And now that we see a lot of people, they maybe they have experience on Ethereum DeFi side. That's good. I think those are a lot really great informative guides and a place to get started to understanding how this works. The specific functions and the way we operate stuff on Tezos is a bit different, but if you look up how-tos or what is 101 material on YouTube or anything else about how lending systems, DeFi lending systems work, those would be advisable too. But yeah, let's see. Any other questions? Just ask them in the chat thread.
I have a question.
Oh, you do? Go ahead.
I do. Can I try demonstrating repay one more time?
Okay.
All right, 1 second. Okay, so I set up another scenario for a loan. Can you see the screen? Excellent, thank you. So this is another test account. It's collateralized 1,000 XTZ, against which I'm borrowing some fraction of BTC and some fraction of ETZ. So what I'm going to do is I will repay my ETH loan, and I'm going to pay more just to repay it completely. This is going to throw me into Galleon to confirm the transaction. Very cool, so that's in flight. I forget off the top of my head, unfortunately, which one of these accounts is supplying the ETH, so I can't easily show you who accrued the interest, but we should see this loan get repaid. And it's repaid. It's gone from my active loans. That's all I wanted to show you.
Awesome.
Cool.
Hey, Kevin, I have another question for you. So,
Oh,
first of all, noting that borrow repay, that kind of completes the set. But what you were talking about before about lending and borrowing on Tezos in general, right? So there seems to be a sort of spectrum, right, or a start and finish line. On one side, like on the left side, you have your checking account where you're getting, I don't know, 0.001%. And on the right side, or the destination, we have uh, our fancy TezFin platform or something like it. Whoop, siren in the background. Anyway, so there's there's all these intermediate stops. So one of them might be some crypto exchange, right? So you deposit your funds with a crypto exchange, and the crypto exchange might in turn lend your lend those deposits on TezFin, make some return, give most of the return back to the user, right? Whereas some people might choose to completely forgo that intermediary and fully directly use TezFin. And another option is maybe a little bit down the line, some bank chooses to fundamentally point some portion of their old school bank deposits towards a platform like TezFin. So as as a principle behind TezFin, what do you think the spectrum is going to end up looking like in 3 years, right? Like what are our collective hopes with TezFin? Who gets how far in that spectrum? What are the kind of people that go all the way, directly using TezFin, right? Like basically taking the balance in their savings account, converting that to USDTZ using either a Mintry or down the line, one of the better systems that you have in mind. And what kind of people are going to end up using an intermediary like a crypto exchange that does use TezFin? And what proportion of people do you think are not even going to be aware that something called TezFin exists, and yet their old school bank reserves are going to end up being lent out on TezFin? So like, what are the basically 3, 5, and 7 year hopes behind this project?
oh, that's such a thick question. It's much more than what is meant by repay.
Exactly.
But no, it's good because it's also like it asks the question like, where is DeFi going in general? Like, what is this all about? Is this just to get bigger and scale the way we are at this point, or is it to replace the banking systems? It's hard to imagine the form that it will take, but I think it'll definitely start to replace, uh, uh, not directly, but just by way of, well, we don't need this other stuff anymore. Already, when you go to the bank, like they'll tell you go do this stuff online. And the next step, that the deeper step, is to look at these blockchain-based financial systems and see, okay, this is a much better return because this is where more participants are. This is where money moves more liquid. That's where the action is. Just the sheer friction, if nothing else, of the previous system, of the traditional system, and the inaccessibility of it will make it the smaller pie. But also, yeah, there's always a chain of stuff that resells. I mean, already banks are commercial banks. They'll sell financial products that will be, they'll sell financial products that are based off of other products that are maybe fractionalized from some other product that involves a million different things, so on and so forth. And maybe some of those things even already include crypto. So removing those intermediary steps, it's a better bottom line for all parties involved, and that is to the retail customer of any sense and all the stuff that's behind it. This is the most direct as it can be. This is, as farm to fork as you can get. These systems, DeFi is. So lending is, I feel like, the crown piece of all this stuff, or the keystone that just enables everything else to which it draws its energy and water. So yeah. But the form will be very different. Like the way in which our culture is will be shaped a bit differently too. Cool. Well, my battery's about to die. So unless we have any other questions. See, I'm doing this on a MacBook Air because there are only 2 ports. I need a dongle that would connect more items. For the next time. All right, cool.
Where do people find us next if they want to engage, if they want to find out more?
So they will go to the Discord, and then you can see that. I believe it's on the website now, but you can see the link to it on the Twitter, which people are probably watching it at this point. Yeah. And I'll repost that link as well. So the Twitter, different social media, but follow that Twitter. That's an important one. Yeah. Oh, wow. We don't have the Discord on the Tezos.finance site. Well, we'll get that on there today. But yeah, so by the time you watch this, probably it'll be on the Tezos.finance site. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for joining us, asking questions, and all your participation in social media. We really appreciate it. We'll do more of these coming up, and a lot more variety to them too. We'll get into specific topics. Because this is a very dense discussion to get into. There are a lot of little parts to this, and I don't just mean lending and borrowing. It's a multitude of things and different economic concepts. So, yeah, thanks for coming. Bye.
Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.